The people we call the Austrians today descended from the Bavari, a Germanic tribe who came to settle Bavaria and Lower Austria in the mid-8th century. But they were far from the first people to call Austria home. Celts, Germans, Romans, even Turkic nomads have come to control this land from prehistory to antiquity. In 976 AD, this area would become the periphery of the East Francian Empire, who used the strategic position of Lower Austria as a defensive borderland, adding to what would become the Holy Roman Empire. Being so far away from the rest of the empire, Austria was a backwater. Its only real achievement was to act as a buffer zone between the Slavs and civilization. During the 11th to 13th century, Austria started to expand down the Danube, only bumping into the Bohemians in the north, Carinthia to the south, and the Magyar Kingdom in the east. Lacking the ability to overpower any of its neighbours, Austria's growth was halted. Things would only pick up again when Rudolf Habsburg took the Austrian throne in 1278, beginning one of the most infamous dynasties in European history. Habsburg Austria, like its predecessor, found it difficult to overpower their neighbours militarily, so the Habsburgs had to change their strategy from conquest to incest. The Austrians cheated their way to the top by marrying into powerful countries around Europe and merging royal families to build their empire. Styria, Carinthia, Tyrol, Burgundy, and by 1519 even Spain was part of the ever-increasing Habsburg realm. The territorial peak of the Habsburgs would come in 1551, when they controlled a diverse cast of nations from Hungary to Silesia to Bohemia, as well as a massive overseas empire. But this wasn't the work of the Austrians. This was more a decentralized, barely connected confederation of many little kingdoms with nothing to do with each other. Thanks to the complexity of the Habsburg realms, the rulers would end up with such impossibly long titles, such as Ferdinand I, Holy Roman Emperor, King of Hungary, and Bohemia, and Slavonia, and Archduke of Austria. But in reality, these titles really didn't have much authority, and only 5 years later, Austria would lose much of its weird family as long-distance relationships never seemed to work out. After a whole century of not much, in 1714, after the Treaty of Utrecht, Austria would again become a great power legitimately, gaining Naples, Milan, Sardinia, and the Austrian Netherlands, even winning major victories against the declining Ottomans to gain more land in the Balkans. North of Austria was Brandenburg Prussia, a young, reformed and militaristic nation. The Austrians would make the crucial error of underestimating the power of the Prussians, who would very soon outpower the Austrians entirely. In Germany, Prussia was connected, strong and growing. Austria was distant, stagnating, divided, and losing influence. The wars of Austrian succession and the 7 Years' War led to Austria losing territory and influence to their worst enemy. Austria had to rapidly reform its military and bureaucracy if it wanted to stay as a great power at all. So, what happened next? Oh shit! The French Revolution and the following wars was the culmination of enlightened liberal modernity colliding with the old-school ways of governing. It was a rude awakening for Austria, perhaps the least modern and least reformed country on the continent. Francis II saw Napoleon destroy Austria's influence in Germany and finally decided to disband the Holy Roman Empire, ending Austrian involvement in Germany for good. After Napoleon's defeat in the Congress of Vienna, Austria did regain much of its contiguous empire, but no amount of land could hide the fact that the Enlightenment and Napoleon had spread nationalist and revolutionary ideas across all of Europe. This was great for Prussia, as nationalist sentiment was used as a tool to unite Germany around Berlin, but this was the worst possible thing for Austria, as Austria was divided between 1 billion different ethnicities, and about 5 seconds after the dust had settled, movements for independence began, most violently the Hungarian Revolution and the Italian Wars of Independence, which I explain in this video. Prussia saw the decline of a rival, and with the help of Italy, swept in for a quick and decisive victory. Before the war, Austria could barely control their empire. Now they had to cede major concessions to Hungary to avoid the empire imploding entirely, creating the joke we know today, Austria-Hungary. The dying years of the empire would go from one crisis to another, ending with World War I. The Austrian military was a joke, but luckily their main opponent was Italy, who was also pretty useless. By the time Austria finally surrendered, it was already too late to save the empire. The minorities had already declared independence, the army was rebelling, and the Allies were closing in from all sides. There was no glorious fight to the last man. Instead, the treaties of Saint-Germain and Trianon anticlimactically ended one of the oldest kingdoms in European history. The usual post-war treatment happened in Austria as well as every other pre-fascist country. The democratic government was ineffective and unpopular, the Great Depression polarizes the population, a fascist party gains power and overthrows the government, and finally replaces it with a fascist authoritarian one, only to end with another World War defeat and the deaths of 120,000 Austrians. Despite Austria's pretty avid participation in the slaughter of thousands of Jews, Austria went under the radar in the post-war negotiations, gaining full independence in 1955, as the Allies focused on the division of Germany. With American support in the rebuilding of Austria's democracy and subsidizing its economy, Austria would recover slowly. Austria would join the EU in 1995 and adopt the euro 4 years later. Austria was once more a wealthy alpine country. No need for military overstretch when all of Europe is your ally. No need for enslaving nations when you have immigrants. And no need to regulate spending when Germany can bail you out, just like old times. Austria has retired from its long and violent past. Today, it spends its sunset years in their alpine cottages, dreaming about world domination.